Remember Zach Messler from season 1, episode 12?
The whiskey guy?
The messaging guy.
Boom shakalaka. Same guy. You know what's worse than bad whiskey?
Bad messaging.
And what do they have in common?
They burn.
But our friend Zach knows something special.
How to make both go down smooth.
Every Wednesday, he hosts free clarity rule sessions.
45 minutes, just you and Zach.
Getting your message crystal clear.
So you attract more of your ideal customers.
Head to cloudyrules.com and book your slot.
Because life's too short for bad messaging.
Mm-hmm. We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do. And
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role. Welcome to another episode of We're Not Marketers. Today we decided to do something a little different. First of all, I'm just going to let our guest introduce herself. But before that, let's go back to the show host, right? I'm Gab Bugeaud, sales deck intern. I'll pass it up to one of my co-hosts, Zach.
Hey, this is Zach on the mic. I'm going to change my title slightly. It's the Sales Water Lad.
Ooh!
Solid.
that's
Solid.
fire. All right, well, mine's not nearly as cool, and I'll keep mine. So Eric Holland here of the Misfits, and Gab, we have an extra special episode. So I'm going to let you do the honors and not just introduce one guest, not introduce just two guests, but introduce all three guests today.
Yeah, but I'll let them introduce themselves, but please give a warm welcome to Shoshana, Elliott, and Aphrodite.
Hi, nice to be here.
Nice to meet you, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Awesome, folks. So if you can maybe describe yourself in 1 or 2 sentences, it can be your spirit animal, a fun fact about product marketing, or whatever you love, but please introduce yourself briefly.
And don't forget to add your name too, because this is an audio-only podcast.
Yep.
You go, Shoshana.
Yeah, I'm Shoshana Cordova, and I have been a founding product marketer at 3 startups across totally different industries: fintech, mobility, and health tech. Before that, I worked in journalism and never used slides. It just wasn't a thing. And now I went out on my own and went the fractional PMM route, and that's what I'm doing now. So that's me.
Awesome. Congrats on making the jump.
Thank you.
And hi, everyone. I'm Aphrodite Brinsmead, and I've spent around 16 years or so working as a product marketer, a content marketer, an industry analyst, and a consultant. Lots of work developing messaging and content for complex B2B SaaS products. Most recently, I was the founding marketer at a company called Duro, which is an early stage company that works with manufacturers in aerospace and robotics. And yeah, I also spent 10 years as an industry analyst at a company called Omdia, which was fun. Lots of market reports and presenting globally. Really excited to be here.
Awesome. Glad to have you here.
And then finally me, Elliott Rayner. So nice to meet you all. Yeah, my story's kind of had 3 chapters. Chapter 1 was building products in the sports industry. So first with Adidas and then with ASICS. So for the FIFA World Cup, the Olympics, and then wanting a challenge and then regretting it to move into the tech world and getting more of a challenge I ever thought. So leading marketing teams for Babbel, the language app, and then as a CMO of Arian. And now in my 3rd chapter, which is what we're going to talk about, I think, this founding PMM. So coming in to lead the marketing for OWOW, which is a digital product studio. It's been around for 12 years, but they never had a single marketing hire. And they convinced me to come in.
So you are the marketing team.
I am the marketing team with some AI tools to keep me sane and a couple of other key people who in the team who I've now convinced them that they are marketers. So yeah, it takes a village, and I'm slowly converting engineers and designers to be marketeers.
Awesome. Excellent. So before I ask you guys the specific question we ask everyone, I just want to give some backstory to why we're doing this. So basically, the first idea was to have a debacle between PMMs and making something out of social, but then as we have to say no to some project. And I believe it was Shoshana that gave the idea that it could be like a panel. And I very much like that idea. And we decided to regroup all people on specific takes on being a solo or funding PMM and trying to making your mark, basically. Before we dive into that subject, I'm just curious, are product marketers actually marketers?
I have a more nuanced answer than yes or no. Sorry about that. But basically, I think when the marketing team recognizes that product marketing is both strategic and collaborative, then yeah, product marketers can be marketers in that company. But you got a problem when the marketing team doesn't see it that way and thinks that product marketing is super tactical and just putting out assets. Then in that company, I feel like, no, you're not really marketers, or maybe you're just not a fit for that company.
That's a good answer. And again, I feel like it just fall under the most given response by marketing. It depends. So a point on the maybe. I like your take.
That is a product marketing go-to response. It depends. Props to you. Props to you.
Nuance is the way.
I'm gonna say yes. We are marketers. To Elliott's point, everyone in the company has a role to play in like growing the organization and making us seen. Whether you're talking to your friends, you're like sharing something on social media, it's all marketing. And whether your role is product marketing or head of marketing or sales, we're all trying to do the same thing and put the brand in the best light.
Yeah, I'm the same. Only because everyone is marketing. Whether you're trying to pick someone up from a bar, apply for a loan, or get a promotion, you're using marketing. You're in the persuasion game. It's just that we're focused on it. But I think most people are marketers in their personal and professional life, whether they realize it or not.
Awesome.
Okay.
Three great answers.
We just totally got owned. And we're not even 5 minutes in the episode. Look at that.
Do it though.
Gotta change the name of the podcast.
Oh, we're changing now.
35
We're
minutes.
changing it,
No,
right, guys?
No, I'm like Aphrodite and Elliott. You guys planted your stake in the ground, and Shoshana said it depends. You gave us a great challenge. Let's kick this conversation off.
I'm ready.
Hey,
Let's do it.
I would like to do it in the opposite order of who answered. Well, Elliott, the idea here is how can I make my mark as a founding or sole PMM? And in your case, you had a very interesting key take. I'll let you introduce it so we can start talking about it.
Yeah, so you mean you want to talk about the AI solution in general?
Yeah, basically, I want to get your key take on how can traditional PMM improve their positioning and lead with that by using AI, for example.
Yeah, so I think that's the interesting thing now is that in my experience with 20 years of marketing, the job is getting tougher. The competitors are getting bigger and the budgets are getting smaller. So it's getting more and more difficult. And I think that's where we have to use really creative ways to combat that. We're an AI studio. We help brands build AI models. So it was actually easy for me to start speaking to our engineers and trying to think, could we actually start building things to make life in marketing a little bit easier? And the example we talked about was about positioning, because you had April Dunford on your podcast. It was a great episode where the queen of positioning. But the weird thing about positioning is that we often think that once it's done, it's true. But what happens if in the next couple of years with AI popping up that you have 50 new competitors every month with new products, new features, and everything changing? And we're going to need to be able to keep a really good eye on how the market's changing. Now, that's really easy if you're for a bigger company and you've got a competitive analysis team. But if you're a smaller brand, how do you do that? So one thing we're exploring is this idea of live positioning. So if you can tell me 100 of your competitors, you can program a GPT model to monitor the landing pages. And every time one of them changes their hero segment, changes their language, launches a product, you can get an update to say, hey, maybe you need to alternate your positioning. It's very experimental, but for me, we've always talked about positioning needs to evolve, but who's got time to do it? But this is where AI, I think the use case for AI is really interesting, to say, look, can you keep an eye on all of what I would call the dynamic changes? So your static changes are very rare. Your product and your brand stay the same. But can you update me on my customer? Can you update me on the market? And can you update me on my competitors? I think AI can do all of those things. And those are the kind of things that we're building now to take the pressure off marketing teams. And we're the first subject to test that ourselves.
May I ask one clarifying question really quick?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
And I'm gonna open up to that because based off of what Shoshana, again, being a founding PMM, and Aphrodite, having your deep experience in PMM here, is that Elliott, with that in mind, a lot of us in PMM struggle in getting our teams on board with our positioning state without AI. So I'm curious, how have you and the team thought about that in relation? How would that differ with an AI solution providing that consultative approach?
Yeah, because I think really the only thing that AI is doing is giving you more insight. So very cheesy line, I apologize for it, but our mantra is AI is not as a tool, but as a torch. Because we've had 100 brands approach us and say, I want AI. And I say, well, what do you want to do with it? And they say, we don't know, we just want AI. So we do workshops with them to figure out if they actually need it. And most of the times they don't need it as a solution, but they need it because the pressure's on them and they need more insight because things are getting crazier. The trends are getting faster and there's never been more competition and data. And so I think that's the thing. So actually for the rest of the team, they're happy because all you're doing is you're bringing in more data to back up your claim to say, we are so sure that this is our positioning, not because we've checked with 3 competitors 1 year ago, but because every week we're live checking 50 new competitors who are coming into the market and our positioning is still strong or it's not. And this is why. As long as you've got the data to back it up, I think most people in the company are happy if you're like showing and not telling. And we're going to get onto it. But as a founding PMM, I think that's the thing we have to do is educate because they might not understand some of the reasons that we're doing these decisions in marketing. And that's where our responsibility to bring them on that journey to show, I'm not just making this up. I'm not doing this on instinct every day. Here's my evidence for that. And I think AI is a great way to bring in that evidence, not just regularly, but on a daily live basis.
That's funny you're bringing that up, that people want AI for the sake of having AI. And when you start chatting with them, you understand what you need is how to leverage it to have more insight, have more data. And I feel like the job of being a PMM strongly relate on that. We're getting told very often, test the messaging, test the positioning, work on this. But it's always a question of what's the context? How can we have the right data to be statistical significant? And is it just another thing on top of our to-do that we'll forget or won't be able to monitor? But when you have that data, those insights, then you can just take the right action.
Yeah. 1 year ago, it was convincing everyone that AI is valuable. Now you don't need to do that. Everyone is convinced it's valuable. I think the majority of people are using it in their personal life. But now it's convincing people that it's not just this shiny object that you need to have a use case for it and test it and find an authentic way to use it rather than just bringing it into all of your processes. But I think that's the challenge for the year ahead.
I'm curious. I know that Eric's eyes shined when Elliott talked about the potential use case. And I know, Eric, you recently worked on a positioning project. I'm sure you have a lot of follow-up questions, but I'm curious if Aphrodite or Shoshana, what are your thoughts on that key take?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm using it for, I'm constantly experimenting as well with different platforms. So I definitely can see the higher quality of content that Claude puts out as opposed to ChatGPT. But everything is constantly changing, right? So tomorrow ChatGPT may have caught up, but playing around with it in a lot of different use cases. And one thing that I did recently was just to analyze a subset of prospect contacts and see, can you tell me what industry they're in, and can you tell me what's the predominant industry among these companies, so that maybe we can do something with segmentation, right? So that's grunt work of data analysis. That's not the output that a PMM is going to provide, but it's a good input that can then guide you to create your own output. So that's where I'm playing with it.
One clarifying question really quick here, and it goes back to Aphrodite. I'm not taking your thunder. I want you to get your take on this. You mentioned behind the scenes about PMM having an identity crisis. From that perspective, AI also being a new tool that a lot of us don't have a lot of awareness on how to use it. We're still in that understanding of it. With what you know so far, just from prior experience, does using AI in product marketing help solve that identity crisis, or might that make that identity crisis more pronounced? I'm curious to hear your point of view and on that take right there.
Yeah, I think yes and no. I'm gonna copy Shoshana with the answer about a vague answer. I would say I love what Elliott said about using AI for research. I think that's great if you're using it to gather data points, backup. I spent 10 years as an industry analyst. I think that kind of ingrained me to be a research-driven marketer. like digging into the customers and competitors. I think, however, on the other side of things, I think that the challenge with AI, which I've read, obviously there's lots of different tools out there, there's lots of competing things, is keeping that authenticity and intuition. And I think what makes great product marketers is us having our experience, whether it's years of experience in product marketing or years of experience in a certain industry, or being able to take our own data points, take the unique things about the company where you're working and really pull them out. And I don't think AI can do that. And I think there's a risk of over-reliance on it not being so unique. And I will say one thing about what Elliott was saying as well, is I think we can get really distracted by our competitors. And I don't think we should be doing that. I think we should be making the decisions based on our own internal data, what our customers are saying, and we need to know what the competitors are doing. We know to be able to respond. But if we're constantly like changing things based on what they're doing, I think we're going to lose our consistency and the brand voice.
Oh, the schism between the yes marketers crews right here. Don't follow the competition, or do follow the competition.
I think it's really nice to not follow, but be aware. I think you need to be aware about where is best to put your next foot forward. But I completely agree with just saying, because the next use case, and for me, it's the first use case that most product marketers I would encourage to follow if you can, is I'm interested to, if any of you are recording your sales calls with your customers yet. So some nodding, that's really good, because for me, that's another brilliant way that we didn't have access to before. So now you can quite easily, using Gong or Grain or 100 different options, to, if there's 1,000 calls a week, you bring in those transcripts and into one GPT model, which can then spot patterns, which I wish I had the time to read through 1,000 transcripts of sales calls, because actually there's some great insight there. Like we've been told our whole lives, get closer to the customer, get closer to your sales team. But it's always been hard to do that. And I do think there's some great advantages of that's where it can come in as well. So I think, like I say, it's the three. Using AI to give you a better perspective of your marketplace, a better perspective of your customers, and a better perspective of your competitors. But at the end, you're right, Aphrodite, there needs to be a human being at the end of that analyzes all of that and makes the last decision. But I think the more you can generate the insight, you're going to be in a better position to make those decisions.
Awesome. Eric, were you about to say something?
No, just I'm super hype, and I'm going to be hitting up Elliott after this for some tips and tricks, man. I want to nerd out so bad right now, so I'm gonna hold back and let everyone do their thing. But
I'm gonna hook you up. All right,
Elliott. I'll see you in the DMs.
Awesome. Yeah, so we just started covering a little bit your subject, Aphrodite, on like the product marketing that is facing an identity crisis. Curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think there's a few things going on, and I think that depending on the organization, especially like in a smallish startup, maybe there hasn't been product marketing before, maybe there hasn't even been a marketing team. I think there's two big challenges that are causing this identity crisis. On the one hand, like there might be in a company that really understands what product marketing can do, and then expectations are super high. Your expectations might be fix the entire sales process, help us drive revenue, track every competitor, and decide what all of our website copy should be. And I think then you're set up to fail in a way, because there's just too many things that one person can do, even with all the AI research and the quick analysis of the sales calls, which I think is awesome. And then on the other hand, I think there's a lot of founders out there who don't really understand product marketing, and they don't think they need it. And many cases I see in companies that are hiring demand gen and growth marketing, they want the leads, they want new business, but they don't have the research and the strategy and the messaging and positioning in place. And I think one of the things that adds to these challenges is really about metrics, like this topic of like how we measure what product marketing is really doing. Because all of the things that we're contributing to, there's other factors in place. If we're launching product, obviously it has to be a good product, it has to be the product that customers want. And we don't always have, sometimes we do, but we don't always have control over what's developed on the roadmap. Same with revenue. You have to have enthusiastic sales team who know what they're doing. Like you have to have a big enough target market. You have to have good product market fit. And there's only so much we can do as product marketers. So I think all of these factors are really leading to with the cutbacks in marketing in general, with like lack of understanding, it's a pretty difficult job.
I've always thought the name doesn't help. I've
Yeah.
always thought that product marketing is not the most perfect name, and it feels true that every product marketer's first job is to explain what product marketing is to the rest of their colleagues.
That shouldn't be a problem for the yes marketers because,
I do have a question I want to pose to that. Have you ever been at a company and seen someone else give a charter? I've only ever heard of a product marketing charter. I've never seen that from any other role, department, anything. So just wanted to call that out for the group and see what
I
you
have not
think.
seen any other function give a charter. I personally haven't done that yet either, but it's like in every single one-on-one when I join a company, like number one question is, what is product marketing exactly? And even when they don't ask, I tell them because I know that they want to ask and maybe they're embarrassed too, but no one gets it.
I was thinking about this and really thought, how can we like make ourselves more strategic rather than tactical? Maybe we should rename ourselves like marketing strategists or business strategists, because that's really what we're doing. Ideally, unless we're doing a lot of tactical content
Business
creation.
strategist is something that Yilin Pei actually wrote about before we had her on the pod, but I agree with that. I think it's a question of identity crisis, sure. But if you're a solo or funding PMM and you have no other marketing resource, the scope of your role kind of changed very drastically. Something that can be doable is, and I was doing it when we were like 9 marketers at ShareWeb, but it's explaining this is what I do and this is what I don't. Because once you start bringing that context on I can help you with this, I can't with that, you're not trying to please everyone and just trying to have a high value or high achievable role. You're spending time on what actually matters, and this is how you can get that little bit of influence that help you get there.
Yeah, I actually have.
No,
Go on,
I was about to
Aphrodite.
say, no, sorry guys. I was like, really quick here, maybe rebranding product marketing might not be the right play. We're trying to rebrand product marketing, and 80% of PMMs are saying, y'all are wrong. So, I don't know, that's from personal experience, but after Elliot, y'all take it away.
You go after that.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the defining of roles and responsibility, and I think it's a great idea to say, yes, I can help with this, no, I can't, but then the list of yeses can also get pretty long. And I wanted to say part of, as a founding product marketer, when you're working in like a small startup, and this is one of the things I heard you talking about with April Dunford that I thought was a really good conversation, is that before there's any product marketing in the organization, before there's even any marketing in those organizations, there's still people doing that job. The founders are deciding what the messaging is going to be. They're still going out selling, making up the story as they go along, depending on what the prospects are saying. It's probably not so organized and not so strategic. But I think when you come into an organization, like sometimes it's not just about knowing what you can and can't do, but it's about people giving up those responsibilities, like the product team giving up their responsibility for like the communications, or the founders giving up their overseeing of what the messaging should really be, which many times I don't think they really want to.
Yeah, I think for me, just like all of you, I've spent a lot of time trying to explain what it is to a lot of people who are looking very bored back at you. And I think the best way is to always explain what the company might be like without it. And that it used to be very easy. You just had the best product and then you would win the market. But we don't live in that world anymore. And there's 1,000 different ways to sell a new product. And no product manager wants to build something that won't be used. And no marketer wants to sell something that doesn't work. And that's both of the things that happen without product marketing. There's a really great quote from Jeff Bezos recently, who owns the Washington Post. I must have missed that. I had no idea. But he was explaining why the Washington Post has now less than 20% credibility rating, which is like less than politicians, which is not a good place to be. And he said that one good quote that came out of it is that voting machines have 2 responsibilities. One is to count votes accurately, and 2 is to convince people that they count votes accurately. And I think it's a really good connection to products, because that's what product marketers need to do now. Is 1, you need to have the best product, but 2, you need to convince everyone that you've got the best product. And that's really tough to do. And I think really that's what you're trying to do is product marketing. Create the best product, but convince everyone you've got the best product. But we've all worked in different places where product marketing means 10 different things. So work some places and not others.
This
If
is
Jeff
gold.
if Jeff Bezos is comparing a newspaper to a voting machine, I'm like, I think the Washington Post got a few more problems on their plate right now. That's my take.
Exactly.
I'm back up.
But you said something very, very interesting. And if instead of explaining what is product marketing with, just explain what is it without. And I think it's a good comparison to when trying to clarify your ICP. Don't necessarily go towards what it is, but go towards your entire ICP, what it's not, and stop wasting sales effort towards it as well. But love the way you explained it.
Yeah, look, the marketplace is filled with failed companies with great products. And I think that's why you can show them, don't show the success stories, but say, remember how good these guys were, but they weren't positioned correctly and they weren't saying the same things. And those two things come from a product marketing team working very hard to do those two things.
That's a very fair point right there. I have like, Shoshana, I have a question for you. I'm not here to put you on the hot seat by any means, but there's something you also said behind the scenes. And you spoke a little bit about 30, 60, 90. I'm not going to say anything right now because I know you're gonna share a little bit about that. But underneath that layer, as a 3-time found PMM, there's something you might know that we don't. That going back to what Aphrodite said here earlier is that, hey, some founders, CEOs, don't know product marketing. They don't care about product marketing. As a founding PMM who's done it 3 times, how did you become a founding PMM in organizations where maybe leadership didn't know or care about PMM? Like, how are you selling the role that we're not doing? I'm just curious to understand that. And then the last point, how do you prove out that value where you're going to tell people, you're like, hey, like, I have a 90-day plan. But then sometimes, like, these leaders they're like, no, we want results in 3 days. So I know I threw a little bit at you. You can choose how you want to address that, but that was sitting with me for a bit.
Yeah. So I'm gonna address that a couple ways. One is, and it goes back to when we talk about what is product marketing, and I think a lot of CEOs and leadership teams, they've got like their VCs saying, oh, I heard about this thing called product marketing. Like it's a thing, like you should probably have one. And so they know enough about it to know that they want one, but not quite enough to know what that thing. And part of how I describe it, and I love Elliott's description of look at where it's not, but I try to show it as part of the ecosystem. So the way I look at it is I see product marketing as a place where product capabilities meet market needs, but in a perpetual feedback loop. And I think one of the problems and a lot of the ways that marketing leadership or like company leadership sometimes sees it is they just see the part of the feedback loop where we're sending the collateral out to the market. So it's the communication of the company to the market. Some people call it outbound, which I think is a little confusing because of the sales outbound, but that's one term for it. And I view this feedback loop as if you superimpose it on top of an iceberg, right? So it's like what's on top of the surface is the communication of the company to the market, because those are the pretty collateral. That's the pretty deliverables that everybody sees. But what's under the surface is the other part of the feedback loop, which is the market insights that come from like your market research, whether it's competitors or customers or industry trends. And when you do that and you bring those insights back to the company, that's half the feedback loop. You don't get the pretty collateral without the underlying research. And I think that's really key to trying to explain what product marketing does, but also like how you act on it. So I try to surface the research part. If I'm being asked to like, we're going to redesign the website, right? Like every CMO's favorite thing to do. And it's like, well, when I'm going to scope out that project, I'm not going to say, okay, here's what I could have if I'm writing the copy for it, which at a startup, the product marketer is often also writing the copy or doing some content or wearing a lot of hats. And I'm not going to just say, okay, here's when I can have the copy. I'm going to spell out, I need to do messaging roundtables with all the different teams. I need to do one with sales. I need to do one with product. I need to do one with customer success. I need to do one with leadership, because I need to understand how they're viewing the messaging. This is a messaging and positioning project. It's not a website project, right? And surfacing that research and all the stuff that goes on under the surface, that other part of the feedback loop, I think is super important, in communicating it and saying, okay, even just in terms of scheduling it, right? Here's what I'm going to do, the messaging roundtables. I have a few customer calls I'm going to schedule so I could get their insights too. And then here's where I'm going to get to putting the messaging together and turning it into copy for the website. And I think sometimes we fall prey to this conception of asset delivery because that's what people are asking for. It's very rare for somebody to be asking you to do research. When I've been in-house, every time they're asking for a deliverable, they're asking for the final product that they will see. And so I have to surface that and talk about like the research component that's part of that process. So I think that's a core part of communicating what it is and explaining it to people who may not really get it from the beginning.
Okay, I like that. I got one more question for all three of you, but I'm gonna hold off on that question. I'm gonna let you all discuss, because this question might disavow me from getting any holiday cards from any of you. So I'm gonna hold off on that right now. I'm gonna pass the mic back.
Wait, I didn't address your 30, 60, 90 day thing. Should I address that? All right. So basically, we hear a lot of advice of, if you're going into a new company, you better have a 30, 60, 90 day framework and what exactly you're going to do and lay it all out, schedule it all out. I don't recommend that at all. I think it's a bad idea. And the reason is that you don't know what the company's real problems are until you get there, because product marketing looks so different at different companies. It looks different at the same company at a different stage in the company's life. It looks different when they're focusing on pipeline versus focusing on reducing churn. It looks different when they're focusing on one ICP versus another. There are so many factors, and you do not know when you're sitting at home, like waiting for your first day, you do not know where those gaps are. And so my advice is, number one thing that you want to do is find the gaps. And the top thing that I always do going in is I just talk to people for 2-3 weeks straight. I'm just meeting as many people as I can, as many stakeholders as I can, in lots of different teams, right? Definitely not just marketing, because you've got to talk to sales and product and customer success. Often, especially at a startup, it might be the leadership team, it might be the CEO. It depends like how involved they are at that company. You've got to talk to people, and for all of them, as you're explaining what product marketing is, you are also trying to get from them what their role is, what gaps they're seeing, and just trying to you're gathering the puzzle pieces. They don't come in a box. When you're a PMM, the puzzle pieces, you can't buy them from the store in a box. You've got to find the puzzle pieces. You've got to figure out if it's even part of your puzzle. And then you got to go home and start figuring out how to close those gaps and build that puzzle. But until you get there, you don't even know what the gaps are, and your first mission has to be to find them.
I actually want to disagree with you. I think you should have a 30, 60, 90 plan. But I think the first 30 days on your plan, it should be exactly what you're saying. It should be dedicated to research. And I think the reason why I think you need the plan is because you need to set those expectations. That's the time it's going to take to interview the people, to understand the customers, to get all the data from the sales calls. And then I think month 2, month 3, audits of what's exactly already there, prioritization, setting goals, determining those expectations. I think you're right. You can't come into a new organization with preset notions of what you're going to be working on. But I think you do need a plan in order to set some ground rules. Leadership know exactly what time you're going to be spending doing that research. And I think you should set it with the intention that things are probably going to be thrown at you and change midway as well.
Elliott, break the tie. Break the tie.
Yeah, I'm afraid to say, Shoshana, my one-word 30-day plan was listen, and then 60, 90 was to then act on everything that I had learned. And for me, I just can't switch off something in my head, which is always differentiated value. From the beginning, day one, I'm trying to understand, why do people like this product? why do they choose it over other people? Because I know that once I get that, everything else will make sense. And so in my 30, 60, 90, I'm trying not to make assumptions, but I am for sure really digging deep to find out what is that one thing that we've got that no one else has. Because if I don't know that after 90 days, I'm in a bit of trouble. So I've always got that as like my North Star.
It's okay, Shoshana. You can kick it with me at Thanksgiving. We don't have that.
I like the canned cranberry sauce.
we don't serve canned cranberry sauce in this household, so I want to be upfront with you of that. Take that decision. Take that information with your decision.
It's almost a hot take. Now I'm very curious about your I don't know, secret question, Zach. I'm like I don't know about you folks, but I'm very curious about that.
You want me to throw it out? I can throw it out for you guys here. So
please bring chaos.
Okay, so for context, you guys, the context of this question. Before product marketing, I was in sales. If I'm having a one-on-one with my manager in sales, and we're looking at a pipeline report, and they're saying, okay, Zach, here's your number. What's going on? I'm making 60 dials. I'm sending out 90 emails. I'm doing this. I'm talking about work, but my manager's going to push back on me and be like, okay, but what are the results? What's the value? So with that context in mind, for us three, for you three on the call, and open at everybody on the call, how are we selling the value of product marketing to our stakeholders? Because I think you guys have described it briefly with the plan. We are talking about the work, but I'm curious, like, how are you taking that work and selling the value to say, this is why we're doing that? So I want to open that up, and I'd love to hear you guys' take on that.
As a founding solo PMM.
Yes, as a founding solo PMM.
Yeah, so I think we hit on it earlier, that of what metric Aphrodite said, like what everyone's obsessed with metrics and what metric can you own. And I think the answer is it's very different for every company, but you need to find one. You need to find something for influence. For me, is win rate, because it was something very provable, something that changes week to week. And actually, and I think the most important is I really felt like product marketing could influence it. I feel if I get in here and I identify the differentiated value, I change the decks, and I really work with the sales team, I can get that higher. But in 6 months, that might change, right? That might be set, and then I need to justify it for a different position. So I think you're absolutely right. It's you set yourself up for failure, Zach, if you say you go the brand marketing route of, we don't really know, but just trust the system, trust the process, it will happen. We can't afford that these days. But just pick something, make sure that it contributes to the strategic goals of the company, like win rate would, and then own that one and do everything behind it. But that's just from my experience, is grab something and make sure it works.
I was going to say, I think this value piece is part of the identity crisis of product marketing. I think I mentioned it before. I think of the fact that it's not just one metric, like sales, tracking revenue, product, like how many features did you release? It's much easier to justify their jobs than our job. But I do agree exactly with what Elliott is saying. Let's align the work that we're doing to like a key business initiative. Maybe it is about improving the sales process. Like maybe it's about doing a content audit, figuring out how to deliver better decks to the sales team in order to influence like the conversion rate at each stage in the sales funnel. I think it has to be owned. I was going to say one other thing. I think it has to be owned jointly with like cross-functional stakeholders, because most of our work is cross-functional. So I think having a team of people who all own this thing together, where product marketers are playing a big role in it, is going to help. Yeah, so I think could be something related to product, could even be like high-level, top-of-funnel metrics like attention or open rates for emails based on certain messaging and copy. But yeah, I'd like the idea of picking something that's very strategic and aligned with business goals.
I'm going to go for, it's not exactly a metric, but it gives an explanation of why sometimes customer success or whoever owns the relationship with the customer, they're like, wait a second, why do you want to speak to my customers? So I like to explain the kind of the impact of just a simple customer conversation, because people don't always realize like that it has a ripple effect throughout all of product marketing. And so one impact is we could get a case study out of it. That's the most obvious, right? We can get case studies, we can get testimonials that will help sales. On top of that, you have sales enablement collateral that you can spin off. So for instance, like a case study slide that goes into the sales deck and lays out like problem, solution, impact for the specific customer. You can split that by like industry. If you're talking to someone in the construction industry, here's a construction example, and it fits into your sales deck and is good social proof. So it helps sales in that way. And it also affects your messaging and positioning, because how do you get to that differentiated value? Yes, talking to internal stakeholders is critical, but so is talking to the market. And sometimes the differentiated value that they will tell you is not what the stakeholders inside the company think it is. And you don't know that until you're talking to them. And so it affects how you're positioning, how it affects like what your website is saying, how you're drawing them in, what you're appealing to. It affects like, oh, they're using it for this use case. Well, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? So maybe it affects the product roadmap if you see this is a prevalent use case that can draw more customers. And it affects also how you're both how you're conveying your company's message to the market, and you're taking in the market feedback and applying that to your company and your product. So it's both sides of that feedback loop, and it has so many applications. So I like to talk about the impact of talking to customers.
Recap what you guys saying in one sentence here is that to show the current state, show the discrepancy, the delta between the current state and the ideal state. Am I on the same page, all three of you?
I would say find a way to add value by provable value by any means necessary as a founding PMM. That would be it. And I think it's easy to do that because, as the guys I'm sure will say, it's walking into a meme where everything's burning down. It's not hard. There's a lot of fixable things in those first 30, 60, 90. Such basic things that you're like, has nobody thought of just doing? We're showing all of our customers the same deck. Did we ever think of customizing it? It's not. It's stuff that we've taken from other companies and then coming in. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruits that you can do in those first sessions. But then I think to Aphrodite's point as well is like it's not going to be the same thing because of that identity crisis. It's going to be shifting depending what the aims of the company are over time. But as long as you're proving that your value, that I think that's the main thing, especially in those early days.
I have one more thing to add on this. I think it's about setting the expectations early with leadership. Like, what do they think you're going to be working on, and what do they think the impact is, and just making sure they're on the same page before you start doing anything. Let's not even do messaging until we've agreed that this is how it's going to help and what changing the website copy could lead to in terms of like meetings booked and demo requests, things like that. So I think it's about first setting those expectations, agreeing on the value that you're going to deliver, and then getting on and doing it and making sure you're measuring it from start to finish as well.
And ultimately, you're getting there with those tight feedback loops and that research and all of that preparation and strategic work to bring that market context. Guys, any additional questions?
I was just going to comment on Elliott's point about walking into a burning room. I just hope that
it's fine.
Everything is fine.
Okay, you got that. You got that reference. Thank God, because I was really struggling.
No,
it's always hard to explain a meme from an audio way, so I'm going to catch up on
I got that meme. I'm just hoping that I'm given more than a glass of water, because some of us PMMs out here are thrown into a burning room and it's like, well, here's what you got. Put it out. And then you're like, okay.
And sometimes they're giving you a glass of fuel, so it doesn't really help.
Oh, sorry, us. We thought that was water.
Awesome. Elliott, Aphrodite, Shoshana, thank you very much. Where can people find more of you? When can they get more of your hot takes, more information on product marketing?
And also,
LinkedIn,
what are you guys
of course.
working on? And what are you guys working on, too, that people should be plugged in on?
Go on, Shoshana.
Yeah. So I am working on customer-infused messaging, and that for B2B growth stage startups. So I'm calling it peel product marketing because I like to peel the onion. That's what I was taught in journalism school. Keep asking the questions, ask, peel another layer. So I decided that was a good name for my company. Peel.
Love it.
From my side, find myself doing two things: storytelling and AI, like I said. So from AI, if you're interested, yeah, as we said before, get in touch. Oh, wow. And we can show you some of the things that we're doing to help marketing's life be a little bit easier. All of those processes that you didn't sign up to be a marketer to do these things. And now you can give them all to AI. And then the question is, if AI is doing all of those things, what are you doing? My answer for all of that is storytelling. I think that's what we should be doing. And for that, yeah, add me on LinkedIn. That's something I speak a lot about and wrote a book about it. I don't sell it. I just give it away. So if you want it, add me on LinkedIn. I'll send it to you.
Elliott, that's not fair, man. You said yes, product marketers are marketers. So you got to do all of it. You can't just...
I'm getting confused. I'm sorry.
You can't outsource it. You got to do it all.
You can also find me on LinkedIn, Aphrodite Brinsmead, and I last month launched my blog, aphroditebrinsmead.com, very innovative. But I'm going to be writing about marketing, startups, product marketing, being a founding product marketing. So we'd love for you to check it out and follow me.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. It was awesome having you on We're Not Marketers. And we hope people will catch up and understand that if you send us messages on LinkedIn, you might get on the show. Thank you all.
Thank you.
you so
It's great to
much.
be here.
Great conversation.
Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.